Welcome back to the Assertive Podcast. I'm Erica.
I'm Jess.
And we are licensed professional counselors in Texas, reviewing Am I the Asshole Reddit threads to help you learn skills for communication, healthy boundary setting, and assertive interpersonal functioning. Today, we are going to be talking about the difference between people-pleasing versus getting to a compromise. We're going to do this with a post titled, Am I the Asshole for Having a Dry Wedding and Only Serving Water for Drinks? Okay, so basically, my husband and I are getting married later this year. Each of our sides of the family are fairly big, so it will be around 100 to 150 people total. My husband and I are paying for this all ourselves, with the exception of my grandmother, who's helping chip in, and she doesn't really care one way or the other. She just loves weddings in general. We do have a lot of kids in our family, so we decided against making it child-free, but we did decide to make it dry. So there will be no alcohol of any kind at our wedding. Honestly, this doesn't have anything to do with there being kids there or not, but more to do so with the fact that my fiance and I don't drink. Nothing against people who do, it's just not for us and we don't want to. On top of that, we only really drink water. We rarely, if ever, drink soda, so most of the time it's only water with the occasional juice and milk. We don't even drink coffee. So obviously the food, which is a part my grandma is not paying for, is going to be expensive for that many people. We are having our wedding catered, so everyone will have a good choice of food to choose from, but to drink, only water will be provided. We don't want to have to pay for alcohol or soda. It is just a large added expense when we can just do filtered water for a much cheaper cost. Well, when my family and friends found out, they got angry. Some didn't really care, but some are really upset about it, saying that I can just have an open bar so I don't have to pay for drinks, which we could, but we'd still have to pay for the bartender, and we just really don't want to have to bother with alcohol being there. They also say we should at least have soda because how can we expect everyone to drink only water? The kids will be upset. The wedding will be boring. This is not how weddings work, etc. I didn't think this would be a problem. I mean, it's only water. Don't most people drink water every day anyway? Should we pay the extra to have soda to make the family happy? Am I the asshole?
Oh boy, so many decisions to be made.
Planning a wedding is stressful to begin with.
I know. Yeah, there's so many different factors like incorporate. Yeah, this is one where my therapist brain and my personal preference went two different directions on that one. Yeah. What was your first impressions of this one?
I mean, same, like split. If this were my client, what I would be telling them would probably be very different than if this was a friend or some random stranger.
Yeah, because I feel as a therapist, I'm like, this is your wedding. Good for you for setting those boundaries. I would empower them, like pick their battles. And then as a wedding guest, I would be like, dude, what the fuck? Like, why is there all the water at this wedding? Oh man. And I think, I mean, I don't know. I think if like somebody served water, I'd also be like, this is reflective of your relationship. Tasteless and natural, but really unexciting. No effervescence. Oh man. But like if you showed up to a wedding and there was just water, I feel like you would learn something about the bride and groom, right?
Like, kind of bland. Maybe they're not very adventurous or spontaneous.
Yeah.
Don't take risks.
And it's just like there's a simplicity and like which is fine, but I think that it's almost like spice it up a little bit, have a edge to your.
So you show up and like behaviorally profile the couple based off of their wedding choices?
I do. I hadn't thought about that, but I probably do, which makes sense. If two people are planning a party, their personalities are going to be like infused into it. But yeah, I probably would unintentionally or maybe subconsciously be like, yeah, they probably have boring sex. Again, that's a stretch. I don't have any like data to support the beverages like equate to your sexual behavior, but I would be like, wow, this is boring.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same. I think as a therapist, I would validate them and tell them to do what they feel most comfortable with. Yeah. But again, if this was a friend, I would be asking like deeper questions like, why is this hill you want to die on?
Yeah, of all the battles to pick, yeah, that seems. I think buying soda is fairly affordable. I can see how like a full bar and a bartender would get expensive, but
Yeah.
I think it's both not wanting to deal with alcohol then like a budget thing, but this also seems like a bit of a principle coming out here too.
Yeah.
This is kind of a insistence upon like our personalities being reflected at our wedding kind of thing too.
Yeah.
That is kind of interesting how as therapists we might give different feedback than if we were in that person's kind of organic world.
Yeah.
I might say as a therapist, to be honest, if I showed up to a wedding, I might think that's kind of odd. I probably would give some, like real life my experience of interacting with you kind of feedback maybe a little bit.
I think my clients do a good job of communicating either verbally or non-verbally how they're looking for me to respond. So I can tell if this is really beating them up and they just want to make this choice and they need somebody to say it's okay to make this choice. I think as therapists, we're trained well enough to kind of pick up on those cues. But I also have times where clients are like legitimately asking me, like, am I crazy? Does this make sense? And in those moments, I'm going to be, I don't want to say like brutally honest, but I'm definitely going to be more direct because that's my natural therapeutic style. And say like, I think it is a bit weird. I mean, if that's what you want to do, you're paying for it. It is your money.
I mean, I'd always like have my clients back, like, yeah, fuck them. Who cares? It's your wedding, right? Yeah, that'd be a little interesting there. I get like, and when we think about just the concepts of weddings, I think there's different, like, cultural things that go into that. Some culture view it as like a blending of two families. Some view it as a celebration for the couple. It's just a big party or whatever. And so I think there's a little bit of, if we assume that this wedding is in America, there's some cultural norms of what a wedding looks like and there's schemas for that. And so I think to expect people to not come in with that framework and to not be bothered by that isn't super realistic because that's like a benchmark celebration that has expectations around it too. So I think if you're going to plan a wedding, it's not just like you're hosting like a dinner party at your house. There's other factors going into that. Like you don't wear a white dress just because it's your favorite color. You wear it because there's an expectation that that's what you wear, right? So to follow all these other cultural norms and pick the battle of only choosing water, I think that's kind of bizarre, but that's just me.
I do think it brings a good point of who is the wedding for. And you mentioned like, are they hosting a party? But even with the dinner party, if I showed up to a dinner party, I would expect there to be options. I would expect there to probably only be like one choice for food because you're not going to make 15 different meals.
Right. But I think that's what it's just like. It's common courtesy a little bit too. It's like, why would you bother hosting if you know that people are not going to enjoy it? Or like, especially their guests already gave them feedback. I'm not sure why they told everybody this plan and they know everyone's going to hate it. You said one time in one of the posts, real G is moving silence like lasagna, and so it's one of those things. It's like, if you're going to have a very kind of specific preference and you're not open to compromise, don't tell people about that.
So I probably wouldn't tell anybody if it was something I was not willing to compromise on. Like you can just show up and be disappointed.
Especially if it was something that was kind of special to the relationship or you felt like it was like part of the culture of the relationship and you wanted to protect it. If you're not going to be open to feedback, then just keep that sacred between you guys, and just have the water. That's fine. I talk to clients a lot about just kind of like general wellness and movement and stuff like that. I think the average person does not drink nearly as much water as they should. To where it's like, I'm like, you need to bring some water with you. Like drinking soda and coffee, there's water, but I don't think the average person, at least in my experience, drinks a lot of water.
I guess it depends on what we are constituting as the average person. And I say that because now there's this whole new like Stanley Cup craze.
That's true.
And those are big old things of water. So you're getting probably not your full daily allocation of water, but you're getting a decent chunk because I think they're 30 or 40 ounces.
Yeah, which again is probably a third of what you should be drinking in a day, right?
But if we think about, I do have clients who probably are only drinking like coffee and diet soda or coffee and regular soda. Like if we're at least getting a third of what we need, okay.
Right, but then to say, oh, everybody drinks this water, we drink it every day. I think it's a little bit of like being not out of touch with the average person, but just really kind of projecting your own preferences and assuming that's like a widespread thing, when really I think a lot of people usually when I talk about wellness, that's one of the first things people pick. It's like, I didn't drink more water.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Or sleep, usually is the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And so this one, I think the reason you and me as therapists would say, fuck them, do what you want to do, is because I think we would say people pleasing would be a poor way to operate. So what in this situation, or we can talk about even more generally, what do you feel like is the line between being agreeable and open to compromise, because we live in a society where we have to collaborate and we have systems that we're a part in? What's the line between that and then people pleasing?
I think a lot of times with my clients, I think about intent and motive. Like, what is our motive in switching gears? Is it because we know like this isn't that big of a deal and we genuinely want people to have a good time? That sounds like a healthy switch to move into compromise. If it's because this is really important to me, but I'm worried everybody's going to be mad at me and hate me, now we're people pleasing.
That's a good. So I guess would both come from a standpoint of conflict avoidance?
No, I don't think of compromise as conflict avoidance. I think of it as conflict resolution, because the goal of compromise is to get to some type of win-win scenario where we're each maybe giving up a little bit, but we're each also getting a little bit. Whereas conflict avoidance, we tend to usually give up everything because our goal is not to get any amount of win. It's to avoid the conflict.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I think that'd be talk about like motivation. That's the key thing there, is like if you're rolling over because you don't want to fight, that'd probably be people pleasing. But if it's like, oh, this isn't a hill to die on, maybe not my ideal, but I can live with this too, that would be more of a compromise or agreeableness.
Yep.
Yeah. So when we talk about how to compromise and all of those factors, if this couple came to you for premarital counseling, or they're in couples therapy before, how would you kind of maybe talk to them about like, how do you even go about compromising? How do you know how to do that?
Yeah. I think you have to know yourself to even kind of start this process, which can be difficult, but you have to at the very least know what your end goal is. And we can use those goals to guide the decisions we make to kind of get to this end destination.
Makes sense.
So we'd identify those, like, what are our goals? And then we go into like the next step, which is just brainstorming. And really it's more like brain dumping. We are going to throw out every last single option that could possibly happen, whether it's realistic or not. And then we go through those and see what's realistic in here, what's not. Are there any that we can kind of mix and match? So for them, it could look like, well, let's cut the guest list. And then we could still have the level of catering that we want, but we would still have money available for additional beverage options. This could look like their current choice. That would stay on the table. Let's just do water. Let's see if we can find some extra money or cut costs elsewhere so we can keep all of our guests and bring in these other drink options. So really every last little thing, we're going to search the whole world, find every nook and cranny that could be a possibility. We throw it on the table and then see what's realistic and what's not. And how we kind of weed through those is we go back to our initial goals or values. So would any of these, or a combination of any of these, get us closer to our end goal? So I imagine one of their goals is probably they want guests to enjoy themselves. They don't want everybody to be there bored.
Apparently not. They want people to be hydrated. That is most important at a wedding, hydration.
If that's their goal, then they're making value-aligned choices.
Very congruent with that goal of hydration.
Yes.
Get some electrolyte tablets. That's a fucking party.
So, and then we just choose, right? We kind of narrow down this huge number of however many brainstorm options we have. That gets narrowed down to the smaller number. And then from there, we say, what do we think we can live with? What's a good option here?
I like that. And so really, and I think that that's like probably a good practice in general, is having some kind of idea of what outcome or even at least like atmosphere, environment you want to have. And then you need to say, are we getting closer or further away from that? That's a good way of like coming up. And I guess they'd have to even check in. Are we open to compromising? Are these options going to make us feel like we're defeated? So if they kind of, if you're able to just kind of have, okay, this is my general outcome I'm desiring, you can assess those options and then kind of check in internally of like, is this something I'm okay with, or do I feel like I'm resigning something that's really important to me? Checking on. And sometimes even, I think even if you brainstorm and come up with 50 other ideas, and even if you still choose to go with only water, I think that at least gives you some sense of certainty when you get negative feedback from other people to say like, I've thought through all of this. I made this decision for a reason. And at least gives you, I think, more clarity on your reasonings for things.
No regrets.
No regrets. I say, like I am personally white, and most people in my family are white. So I was like, if there's a dry wedding, which I've been to a few in my family, I'm like, white people were very intimidated. I mean, not me personally, but very intimidated by the dance floor. So you either need to have alcohol, or you need to have as many like a cha-cha slide, a Cupid shuffle, like a dance directed thing, because choreographed step by step, because when that shit comes on, we just lose it. That's when they come out to the dance floor. But alcohol can help with a little social lubrication. I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to think if there's been an exception to a wedding. Dance floors are almost always like central to the event, and so it is like a very public. Like if you have social anxiety, it's intimidating a bit, I think, to go dance. And so I think you really need to check in too of what do your people need to feel comfortable, because maybe it's not something that you might personally need at a wedding, but when you think about your guests, like if there's white people, you have to have either alcohol or the cha-cha slide. And those are just factors that have to be present, for a good time there. Oh boy.
That's great.
And always, every time it happens, I'm like, man, white people, like, come on, man, like, get out there when they're playing some booty shaking music. Never show up for that. It's funny.
I'm dying.
Or like if I'm out there at a wedding, I remember my brother's wedding. He was like, "You having fun?" I'm like, "Dude, I have like soaked through my bridesmaid dress. I'm dancing my heart out. Totally sober, but just it was dark enough. Maybe that's a factor too. We gotta have it dark.
Yeah,
it was fun though. He was like, "That's what I want to hear. It's a good wedding."
Yeah,
you did it right.
I think that's what people kind of judge it off of, like how much fun they had. It is supposed to be a celebration,
right? And I think, and again, there's all these like schemas, and I think the water would almost be kind of distracting. If I'm there to celebrate a couple and you're walking into this thing that's quite countercultural. I mean, there's no other event that I've ever been to that only has water available. So just I think that'd be quite bizarre, really.
Yeah.
A
lot of conversations would probably be had around that. Not even like options for like flavored water, carbonated water, just like plain filtered water. And I know one thing for my clients, you were talking about, a lot of your clients are saying one of their goals is increase water intake.
Yeah.
A lot of my clients' complaint is, I just don't like the taste. It tastes bland, because we are so used to flavored beverages.
Yeah. That's what I think a lot of people don't, because it tastes boring. It's also like dopamine overload with beverages. It just water feels unsatisfying. I guess it could. I mean, I think that guests would leave with the talking point being about they only served water. That was so weird. And I think if that's what you want people to remember about your wedding, go for it. And if not, that's the odd battle to pick a little bit, I think. So so let's imagine again, this couple is your client.
Yep.
And let's take it both routes. Say that they decided that water only was going to be their route. How would you coach them to talk about that in an assertive way?
I guess for the people who knew, maybe structure a little bit like an assertive compliment sandwich. Meaning I appreciate your feedback on this topic. We have explored a lot of options based on our personal preferences and the goal for our wedding. We have decided to only offer water, but I'm glad you feel comfortable to bring your concerns to us. I appreciate that.
Your support. Yeah, there you go. I like that.
And then I changed the topic. But yeah. So if they chose just water, that's how I would say they could be assertive with those discussions.
I like it. What if they decided to compromise? Would you encourage them to revisit the conversations or just to update the invitation and move on?
Well, I don't think they would even need to update the invitation because usually they're only choosing their meal.
I'm trying to figure out how they found out about this. They must have told everybody, like an email.
Them, or maybe it's posted on like their wedding website, which is a thing now.
Okay.
So if that's on there, like you could update that on your wedding website, and whoever sees it, sees it. Whoever doesn't. Okay. I don't necessarily think I would go back and update people.
Okay. You just kind of implement the new decision, just roll it out.
Mm-hmm. If somebody then like followed up with me, I give them the update. But I have enough going on. I'm not going to then sit there and figure out like who's talked to me about this and then go back and tell them individually.
Yeah, I think that'd be. I agree. Yeah, and I think it'd also be like, I'm changing my mind because you told me to.
Yeah,
that could even be more. So I guess in the guest are either giving unsolicited feedback, or they are struggling with the decisions and or being struggling with the decisions being made. If one of these guests, for whatever reason, was processing the distress about going to a water only wedding, how would you talk to them about that?
Well, I think the first thing to address would be to ask them why this is the battle they're having this week. Like, you must be having a really like first world problem week if this is what you want to spend your hour talking about. Which may seem invalidating, but I think that might like snap them into perspective. So I would go from there to then say, which makes me think maybe the thing we should be talking about is your relationship with alcohol and why it's so important to you. So I'm not saying this to be mean, but I am saying this because this leads me to think there may be a bigger problem that we are not addressing.
You're like, this is a really stupid problem, so something else is going on.
Yes. Yeah. So either it's like the social anxiety, or they have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, or something else.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to talk about why there's alcohol or not alcohol at somebody else's wedding. I want to talk about why this is so important to you, because that's where we're going to be able to do some work.
I like that. If you were going, I just can't imagine if I was going to a wedding and they made a decision I didn't like, it would never occur to me to be like, why would you do that? Like they have a lot of people in their support system really giving them feedback on that.
Yeah.
Which again, if a guest was, maybe let's say it's the mother of the groom, maybe it's a person who's really, and they only want to have water. Can you believe that? The family's going to be so mad. I probably have talks of like, this isn't your situation, and like controlling maybe preferences or things like that too.
Yeah. Well, and I think if it is somebody that close, this was in another post, and we kind of said this was maybe passive aggressive or shutting down accountability. I don't remember the title of the episode, but it's the one where the sibling sold the house that they are renting to their brother.
Yeah.
But I think if you have like a parent, be like, if that's something you want to contribute to the wedding, we could discuss compromises. So maybe they still don't want alcohol, because one of the lines did say something along the lines of, we really just don't want to have to deal with alcohol. So maybe it's, we can have some mocktails.
So like in that other post is basically like, we talked about like, clear if your opinions wish to be heard, clear his debt. So it's kind of like those things that we were saying, like if it's that important to you and you want to front $300 for soda, then we're open to that. But unless you're going to put your money where your mouth is, your input isn't really taken into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, if they're, I mean, weddings sound like my absolute nightmare. I didn't have one. I don't want one. I go into them, but like a little bit of the center of attention and how expensive they are just sounds that I can't, like, my literal like hell on earth. But love people who like love weddings. I'm also, if grandma's covering every part of the wedding and you're responsible for food, I think to say like we're not going to just like an additional like $300. It's like your cost to you on this has been quite low, and you're going to cause that much disruption when you've had very little financial requirements for a party that we are throwing for you. I think that's also kind of cheap, kind of shitty, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's like saying like, well, unless somebody pays for it, we're not doing any of it. It's like, well, this, I don't know. That's, again, maybe judgmental. I mean, it could be thousands of dollars to feed 150 people. They could be talking 10 grand. I have no frame of reference for how much that is. But that just seems a little bit like, I don't know, just pick a different battle, man. That just sounds so distracting to me than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, we don't necessarily know exactly how much grandma is contributing. They didn't necessarily say if she's covering like 90%, 75%, 50%, just that she's contributing to a portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
But they could have a similar mindset to you where maybe it's not the wedding day that's most important, so they don't want to drain their savings for a one-day party.
Mm-hmm.
They'd rather use that money and invest it in maybe a longer term goal, like buying a house or starting new investments or something else.
Yeah. And I could even, if there's other things, like maybe instead of, we're getting to like kind of other options, but like getting, hey, instead of a registry, we want money for our first down payment of a house. If there's other framings of like, but to like not even address the water, like, hey, everybody, we appreciate you celebrating this and contributing to our first year of marriage, but I think just to, and even, I'm, sitting here drinking something that is not water right now. The post of like, we only drink water, not even coffee. I was like, how judgy. Like, I drink coffee. They're so much better than me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that they're actually judging people who drink things other than water, but it sounds kind of persnickety to me. When we were prepping, you had mentioned something like if they had some specific dietary thing, like gluten-free or veganism or whatever, if you went to a wedding and they had some kind of specific diet thing, would you expect there to be other options?
If it's a big event like a wedding, yes. If it was like an event at their house where they were like hosting a dinner, no. Because I don't expect them to cook, let's say, like meat if they don't eat meat.
Yeah.
Right. But would I expect to sit down to a dinner invitation, all there is like kale and quinoa? No.
Right. Or even like at least to have multiple options, It's like, okay, we have water and sparkling water or flavors you can add to your water, but like there's just no options. So it's really like this insistence that you will like adhere to their preferences, which is kind of again I think a little bizarre.
Yeah, it's a little pushy.
A little pushy. It felt a little judgy to me. Again, we don't know their intentions, but I was like, no. Well, lottie da for you. Good for you drinking so much water. God.
Would you go to a dry wedding? Personally? We talked about like personal versus professional, but personally, would you go to a dry wedding?
Yes, I've been to dry weddings. I found usually it's for reasons that there's some kind of substance use. So either somebody's in recovery, or the worst is that nobody's in recovery and the one side of the family just gets too sloppy or dramatic or whatever. So, I mean, it does set a tone. Usually it's a little bit more reserved. They tend to be earlier in the day. So there's definitely different atmospheres, but I think alcohol is really common. The scheme of alcohol is celebration. So I think, again, even if you don't want to do a champagne toast, have, sparkling cider or something like that. Because I think there is a sense of people use substances to bond. And so I think no, I'm not saying neither good nor bad. I'm just saying that's what people have done. I mean, it's not like coffee and alcohol. I mean, we use all kinds of stuff, cigarettes, whatever. So I think like there's even some kind of communal aspect that happens, I think, around beverages. But yeah, wet weddings and dry weddings for sure have different vibes to them. Yeah. And I've had like open bars for like specialty cocktails. The open bar, the open bar also has a very different vibe to it than like a 2-drink minimum. But yeah. What about you? What's been your wedding exposure?
I want to say I went to one, and I think it was dry, but they did have like a champagne toast.
Okay.
But I'm not sure there was any other alcohol. It's been a while. I was young. They were young. We were, God, maybe not even 22.
Minors in possession. You delinquents.
I was still in school. So, I mean, we were probably right at that 21-year mark.
The most litty of times.
Yes. So I do remember there was a champagne toast, at least for the wedding party. But outside of that, there's been alcohol at all of them. Like if I knew it was going to be dry, I would still go, but I'm probably going to pregame and or bring my own.
Which, again, just because
unless it was for recovery specific reasons. If that was like the purpose and I knew that, I would be very respectful of that. But if it was like budgetary or they only drink water, so that's all they're serving, I'm going to be YOB for sure.
You're like, I'm overcoming barriers. I'm making things happen here.
I am solving my own problem.
Overcoming obstacles. Look at me go here. Yeah. And that's a good, again, you're like, just because you don't have alcohol at a wedding doesn't mean you're not going to be dealing with alcohol or drunk people at a wedding.
Yeah.
You know,
alcoholics for sure are always going to have their own alcohol.
Yeah, they'll figure it out, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to think, the weddings that you've been to, are they the most fun when there's alcohol present?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't drink for almost all of my 20s. So like most of the weddings I've been to, even if there's alcohol, I was sober. So, and I had fun at those, actually. But I think it wasn't like an option that I was, you figure it out, I guess. But I mean, I've done both. Yeah. Yeah, I like your assertive communication sandwich there. I think that's a good way of breaking unpleasant news.
Well, it's just very matter of fact. You're not inviting their opinion in that. You're acknowledging their opinion, but you're not saying like, please give me more of it. It's like, nope, I heard it. I don't care. Thanks anyway.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good. And then if somebody continues to talk about it, to be like, hey, we made our decision and thought that through. I appreciate your feedback. You could just reiterate what you've already spoken about there.
Yep.
That's a good one. Well, hopefully we're never friends with these people, huh?
I mean, we could be friends with them. We'll just party in the parking lot.
That's right. Yeah, we'll have our own pre-party. It'll be a great time. We'll have a great time at the wedding.
So, who do you think the asshole is here?
See, my personal opinion and my therapeutic opinion are at odds here, so I'm struggling.
Give them both to us. You're allowed to be a human.
That's true. I think a good therapist has some congruence with their personality, right? So I'm trying to think realistically, if I'm sitting in front of these people, what feedback I would give them. I think asshole is a strong word, but I would probably say if you're going to throw a party, guest preference should be taken into consideration. And I think this might be a really distracting battle to pick. So I am, again, I'm struggling because I want people to have their own, I don't want people to people please. And I also think there's some level of going against the grain that is going to cause friction unnecessarily. So I think I would say this seems like you are creating unnecessary friction in a situation that should be quite joyous, is probably what I would say. So again, are they assholes? That's a strong word, but I think they're slight assholes. A little bit would be my perspective. And again, I think a way of not being an asshole in this would have been, if you want to do that, don't tell people. I think them inviting it and then rejecting people makes them an asshole a little bit. If you want to be countercultural on something that could be abrasive, just keep it to yourself until they find out a little bit. So that's my take on it. I don't know if that's kind of gray or messy, but what did you think?
I think I'd have to agree. I do think asshole is a strong word. I would maybe substitute that in with inconsiderate.
That's fair.
I think it's maybe a bit inconsiderate to hosts this huge event care so much about allowing them to have food choices, but then not take that tiny little extra inch to care enough about beverage choices.
Mm-hmm.
That also seems very incongruent. But again, if that was extremely important to them and that was aligned with their value set and the goal outcome for their event,
I would support them. I'd be like, good for
Yeah.
y'all. I got your back. If that's what you feel you need to do. I totally
Mhm.
agree with you on that. I would support a client if that was important to them.
For sure.
So this lets everybody know if your therapist does have their own mind, but they got your back.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're always on your side at the end of the day.
We're on your side, right? Even if we think that we really don't want to go to your wedding.
Mhm.
No, I'm joking. I'm sure that could still be fun. It's a bit of the DJ at that point. Like, man, you better have a solid
Yeah.
DJ, right? Other things better really be stepping up there.
Mhm.
All right, let's summarize it for us. What did we learn here?
We learned as therapists, we often have very different professional and personal opinions on topics because we are human. But at the end of the day, we're always going to support our clients and tell them what's going to help them the most. Sometimes that is going to include some kind of blunt honesty. If you're wanting to host an event, think about your audience as well as what your desired outcome for that event is and make your planning decisions congruent with those outcomes. Part of assertive communication is getting to a win-win compromise. And you can do that by brainstorming, brain dumping all of the options, using your desired outcome and values to narrow that down to a desired possibility. Difference between compromising or agreeableness, we might also call it, and people-pleasing is going to be your intent and motivation in changing your mind. And if you're considering not going to weddings solely because there's not alcohol, you may want to check in on your relationship with alcohol. It never hurts just to check in on it.
I feel like people who don't have a problem with alcohol do not have to check in on their alcohol use. If you're wondering if you have an alcohol problem, you probably do. Just gonna throw that out there.
Good little tip.
Yeah. Awesome.
Alrighty, that's what we have for you guys on this one. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Send them to us at assertivepodcast@gmail.com. Until next time.